when we came, we had a real sense that church was a place of blessing, a place of life, and a place of enthusiasm.
Yep.
And so our first desire, I think, for church was to have a real infusion of life.
You know, the church itself had been established so long ago and had had such an impact in Brisbane over decades. You know, obviously had been a bit tired, but that there were people there who really had a faith in God, who really believed that God could do amazing things in this place and through the people there. And I think we just had to, you know, be able to bring that to them to say it's all possible. This is really possible, that we can see lives change and God can do just such amazing things here.
I remember preaching on blessing and life for the first year. Just God wants to bless your life, God wants to build your life, God wants to protect your heart, because we wanted to see that life of Jesus just infused into the heart of the church.
If I remember back to when we were obviously leaving Newcastle, and so we didn't know what God had for us next. Like, we just had no idea. We were like, so what's next, God? And so we, you know, I'd been pushing for a long time to come up with a family holiday up for the theme parks. And so we, you know, we knew we were finishing up there and we didn't know what was next. And Jeff's like, no, we need to just, you know, find a job here now and we've got to work out what we're going to do. And I was more like, no, like, let's live for today, you know, don't worry about tomorrow. And bundled up the kids and came up to Brisbane and up to the Gold Coast. We went to visit our friends Dallas and Cynthia, and we drove past the church down Kessels Road on our way to their house, like totally oblivious to what was going to be.
Yeah, wow.
Within months, we were going to be literally investing our lives into that place that we were just driving past in a moment. And then we were leaving our friend's house and they said to us, there's a, you know, church looking for a pastor. Can we pass your names in? And we said, you know, go ahead. As if they'd want us. You know, they called us up for an interview.
I think one of the things that's always been a hallmark of our church is it's a very people-friendly church. And so we really enjoyed that right from the beginning. 2 years I headed up the youth, and that was great because in those formative first couple of years, all of our emerging leaders had a front-on connection to Jeff and Lee. And so we were able to infuse the culture that was in our heart into the young leaders that were coming through. And we had Joel Rutherford and Sam Jay doing news and being absolute idiots and trying to kill each other during praise and worship. But I remember every week I'd go and get these boys and I'd separate them and I'd send them to the four corners of the universe. And then they'd come back and start bashing each other in the mosh pit every single week. Right from the beginning, I said to Lee, Joel is going to be a youth pastor and Sam is going to lead our kids one day. And obviously we see that now in their lives. They're just stepped up to leadership.
Whatever was preached, I made sure I caught that in my life. I got that into my world and I applied that to my world. And I saw God do amazing things, and it made this place feel like home for me. When I started applying what was spoken to my world, this became my place. This is what I started to own, because what was being preached, I started to see around me.
When we got there, Esther was on the platform, and she was, you have turned my morning into dancing, and I went and took back what the enemy stole from me or whatever. She was 16, and see now that she's a leader that people want to get hold of. Back then, people didn't recognise that. I remember, you know, Ben Higgins coming in with his guitar, and he just arrived. I remember the first youth night you turned up and someone had got you to come in and play guitar, and I'm thinking that's not how we do it, but we'll just compromise the rules for this week.
The discussions. Is that really, are we going to put people on our platform who don't carry our culture, who haven't, you know, whatever, and remember having those discussions? And I remember you saying there's just a period of grace. We've got a period of grace where we can, like, give people opportunity and see where their hearts, whether they engage and whether they put their hand up and what they do to step into their God destiny.
We went to Planet Shakers at the end of that year, so 2003, first Planet Shakers, and all I was believing for, I said, God, all I want from this Planet Shakers is the touch of God on Ben Higgins and the touch of God on LB. If everything else is gravy, I just want you to get hold of those two men. And
He's going to cry now, because I can still remember the row of young people we had there at church, and looking down the row, seeing Ben crying his eyes out, seeing Jeff crying his eyes out.
That was a moment. It was a God-defining moment for our church. It was just straight up front, and the impact of that. I mean, well, LB and Ben Higgins, they're now on our staff. carrying key responsibility. It's 10 years later, and they're not just little kids anymore. They're men, married, building families, and building God's house.
I think something that we tend to do as well, like you say, we identify people and raise them up, but I think it's because we were taught, obviously we caught the heart of what was in Brian Houston, in that if you're teachable and you serve, then what you sow, you'll reap. And so I think when we came here, we gave the other people the ability to rise to that as well, and they have.
And I do sense that at 10 years later, we are just beginning now.
Yeah.
I feel like it's taken 10 years, we've built the team, we've seen people's lives transformed over that time. I remember the first time we met you, Sasha, and you were just so insecure and hiding so that you didn't have to talk to anybody. And now this woman of authority and confidence who's so well healed. And so that, for me, is the job. I just think what an awesome privilege to see God do stuff in your life. I just saw you position yourself and take responsibility for your life and say, I want to be whole and I want to do all that God's got. So you carried this, yes. And I just look at the woman you've become and the message of your marriage and the picture of God's redemption and Todd and how awesome that is. And I just think the grace of God is so fantastic and so inspiring that we can connect with people and see people journey from brokenness. We never get totally whole, but just the wholeness.
Luke and Sarah, and they just had little Isaac. They were a couple who were so enthusiastic. They were youth leaders then, and they were so enthusiastic about what could be, but it was like they didn't have the vehicle of how to get there. They have gone the journey with us so well, like incredible couple, and they've just sown everything that they could into this house. And I believe that because they have, we're seeing so much fruit in their life. Like their kids are loving church, the kids are, connected, and they're seeing their father role model to them what a man of God is. They're seeing their mum say, yes, we do family time, and yes, we do fitness, and yes, we do work, and yes, we do church life, and we have to bring it all in a balance.
Having Jeff and Lee believe in us as a couple and as individuals, and also not only believe in us but allow us to grow as a couple and as individuals. And when we look back, we're sort of a bit scared of who we were, and we look now, it's like, wow, just having people that believed and trusted in us and just prayed for us through the time. Those that are in the house will be blessed, and just making a choice to stay in the house. We've seen our family blessed, we've seen our kids blessed, our marriage, and we have literally just seen God's faithfulness through everything.
I've seen people's lives restored, and we love seeing Jeff and Michaela and just the tremendous growth we've seen in their family and what God has done, and to see families inputting into them. So Mark and Sharon Marnie really investing into Jeff and Michaela, and so you see Mark and Sharon stepping up in authority and confidence in who they are in God, and seeing the impact that has on another family in the church, and see them rise up.
Everything I experience in this church is because of the heart and the leadership of Jeff and Lee.
By planting ourselves here and saying, yes, we're going to be committed to this church, we're committed to the mission of this church, and to become involved in the church, that God has blessed our lives in both our spiritual growth together and our whole life, and our family and our prayer time. It's just been totally blessed and totally changed, and we've just grown as a couple and grown as a family, and it's all because of stepping out, planting ourselves in this church and becoming a part of this church.
I remember one of the first services we were here, and Ian and Christy were getting married. Like, they were the first wedding, although Jeff didn't do it. They were the first wedding from when we were here, and Jeff had to make the announcement of where their wedding was, and it was over at Capella Bar. And so Jeff was standing up there with the announcements in the church, and he's saying, Ian and Christy are getting married, and it's over at Kappa, and the whole church is just laughing at him because he couldn't work out what this Capella Bar was like.
And I remember the first time someone said yes to Jesus was Aqua, and she had been in church for a long time but had never said yes to Jesus personally. And I remember when she responded, I remember that morning, I remember where she was sitting, and it was like, wow, this is awesome. And since then we have seen literally hundreds of people responding to Jesus, saying yes to Jesus.
And just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for encouraging me and being with me every step of the way while I was here. And it was just such a wonderful decision that I made that day, and I just know that you're going to do so well in many more years to come here at Life Church and encourage so many more people and be just such a wise couple through their journeys with Christ. And thank you so much for everything you've given me, and yes, for being such a blessing to me throughout my decision.
From Saskia Hill said yes to Jesus. I think at youth, that came straight out of the school, came out of a family that wasn't really connected with God, and now she's one of our key leaders.
I didn't really know what it was like to be a Christian, and I'd been coming to church or youth for a number of years before I actually finally made that decision that I wanted to have a relationship with God. And because I had thought about it for so long, I decided it was something that I really wanted to do. And so since that moment, I just decided I would absorb as much as I possibly could. So listening to Pastor Jeff's messages and Pastor Lee's messages and hearing them talking about what it's like to be planted in the house of God and how you'll flourish when you're in the house of God, all those sort of things, everything that they say is like little nuggets of gold, and I just try and absorb as much as I can, because I think they're truly inspirational, and you can see from their own life the fruit of God and the hand of God on their life, on their marriage and on their children's life. And I just appreciate their honesty and the realness behind them, and them being able to share that has really encouraged me and helped me, and I've really tried to listen and take the advice of what they've said, and I think that's truly what's really helped me.